Well, this is the very first episode of our Live Wild podcast. We're here with some coffee and some water for Amabel. And so the idea of this is, rather than, like a super formal interview, is two people that travel sitting and talking about their travels. So before we begin, I'm Winston, your host for today. She's going to be one of our hosts too, but we're talking about her trips, so it's pretty straightforward. So it's a case of Amabel just got back from South America.
We did. Chile and Peru. Time length was about a month. So, first solo trip. And, yeah.
You made it in one piece.
Made it in one piece. Didn't get robbed. So this is good. Good start.
So, now, what made you pick South America? Like, the areas you went into specifically.
I think the main thing for me was the culture was definitely a big aspect to it. I had always been really intrigued with the South American culture coming from a Latin background. And landscape was definitely a big thing for me. I mean, as somebody who really enjoys rock climbing, the granite faces were really intriguing to me. So I think just looking up pictures and seeing some pictures online, I just knew that was the place I always wanted to go. And it just was getting the ball rolling and finding a way how to do that.
And when you went down, did you get much climbing in?
I got a little bit of climbing in. So actually, I think that was one of the highlights for me, was because I kind of so Maddie actually, which you might meet Maddie. She put me in contact with some of her friends that were climbers out there. And while I was planning this trip, the whole idea was to be able to climb with these people. And then the opportunity came up, and they said to me, hey, we're going to Cochimo, which is on the Argentinian Patagonia side. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do it, let's go. And then I got a wake-up call because Alejandro, he basically said to me, Cochimo's hard, you need to be prepared, we're going to be doing trad. And I think sometimes as in any sport, you kind of get ahead of yourself. And I just thought, yeah, let's do it, I can do it. And then it just was like, oh shit, I don't know if I can actually do this. So I told them that I think about it for a couple days. And then by the time I decided I wanted to do it, I couldn't get in contact with him. And then I didn't think I'd be able to climb down there, and I ended up meeting some people and got some climbs in.
Awesome. And that is one of the things, because the whole point of this channel is to sort of expose people to adventure and travels and things that they're not going to normally see, and maybe inspire a few people to actually get out. But as sort of the gruff old dude involved in this thing, okay, I'm not gruff like old Al, but
not so much.
But one of the biggest things to pay attention to is the balance between being brave enough to pursue, your dreams, pursue things, try new challenges, and knowing when you're in over your head.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of the thing that Katie's looking at, because our friend Katie is going to be going to Morocco and Switzerland very shortly. And she just got into indoor rock climbing and has the opportunity to do some actual mountaineering on rock and ice. And that's a big step to go from indoors to, 13,000 foot peaks.
Yeah.
Right? So it's that kind of thing of knowing when to sort of go, okay, I'll get out of my comfort zone, and push myself a little bit, and knowing when it's like you're skirting death.
Yeah, and how much is too much, right? Because I think also in a sport like that, you need to be able to carry your own weight. You don't want to. And I mean, these were people that I had never met before, right? So the last thing that I wanted to do was come on this trip and be unrealistic about my expectations and get out there and then just set back like the team, right? So things didn't work out with that group, which is okay. I mean, at first I took that as a little... I was disappointed. Obviously, you get disappointed. I didn't think I was going to get an opportunity to climb out there. And then when I was in Torres del Paine, I met some porters, and they took me climbing. They were, they were more than accepting about my skill level. And I actually met this lady, Heather Bear, and Steven Schneider, which is she's the first woman to ever have climbed the 3 towers in Torres del Paine, and it was just so inspiring for her to say to me, you know, it's okay to climb at your level. Like, it's okay for you. I'd rather somebody say, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing that, than pretend and then get in that scenario and have to back out or put yourself in these risky situations. And I think that's something I'm trying to come more to terms with, right? Is being okay with where you're at, with your ability.
Well, because and the reality comes in is that, especially with something like climbing, there's your actual climbing ability. You know, what grade you can do. Can you do a 5'10", a 5'11"? And then there's the technical ability, right? Like, not from the specific climbing standpoint, but it's like all of the different safety things. Like, especially when you're out in the real world, it's reading rock conditions, snow conditions, knowing about avalanches. Like, it's this whole other world of safety that, you know, and it's so easy to run into the thing of like, I can do anything.
Yeah.
But then it's like, sometimes it's like, I can do anything, just not yet.
Yeah. I think even like the trekking aspect for me too, right? I wasn't used to carrying that much weight for that long. And when I met this lady, I was so I did the W trek, which is a trek in Torres del Paine. Awesome trek for anyone that is in the Patagonia region. Make sure you check it out. It's well marked, so you're safe. But yeah, I did part of this trek, and then there's a section where they tell you do it without weight, and they recommend without weight. And then this day, I just decided, no, I'm going to try this with weight because I want to get comfortable with it. And that was the day that I met Heather, and she's like, "Why are you wearing a pack on your back all the way up here?" I said to her, "You know, I just want to try and get used to it because of climbing." And this is how she kind of started. Oh, actually, I'm a climber too, right? And I think that aspect you kind of forget about when you're trying to train for rock climbing or for these things. You forget. I always forget about the hike in. You know, it's like, I need to be able to carry my weight and get in there. Yeah. So that was good. My knees definitely felt it on the way down. Again, not used to that, right? So.
Well, and it's the difference between like going to the local bluff, like I say, going out, you know, to Milton that we have here, like to the Niagara Escarpment, and doing some outdoor climbing where it's like a 5-minute walk from the car to the cliff.
Yeah, and then a 5-hour walk.
Yeah,
carrying all your gear. Yes.
Yeah, because I've done some climb treks, if you want to call it, where you know, it's 2 or 3 days of backpacking into the backcountry to get what you wanted to climb. You know, so you're carrying all your climbing gear, all your camping gear, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but it's an ass load of work before you ever put your shoes and harness on. So again, it's one of those things for people to you know, get used to. So where did you fly into? Like, obviously you left from up here.
Yeah, so
we're in Canada, by the way.
Cambridge, Ontario. Small little town. So actually, it was cheaper for me to fly in through Lima and then go to Santiago. I was meeting a friend there from Sweden, and we went to Santiago and then kind of worked our way up north to Viña del Mar, which is a beautiful little beach city. And we spent New Year's there, did the party thing, you know, watched fireworks on the beach, and spent it with her family, which was nice. Her cousin actually lives there, and she was a foreign exchange student, so we stayed with the family that she stayed with on a farm, and it was nice to have that local experience. And even like they had like a avocado tree in this, right? So it was really nice to see that side of it. And then I started working down south. So anyone that wants to get into Torres del Paine or the Patagonia region, be prepared for long bus rides. Like you're talking 12-hour bus ride and then a flight just to even get there, right? And then you start your trek. So check out Erratic Rock too for an info session if you want to do some hiking in that area, because they give you awesome tips. So that really came in handy. and then I started doing I did a 5-day trek there called the W Circuit, and then I made my way back to Peru after that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you guys might be hearing some weird noises. Just so you know, it's not anybody's stomach. It's this guy playing around on the floor with his squeaky toy. So if you're wondering what all those sounds are, it's not Amabel's stomach. You know, roar. That's Jasper, our mascot.
He's even got the little harness on.
Yeah, he's ready to climb.
Ready to roll.
So, now, for a lot of this trip, you were on your own, though, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
So, take me through that, because I will never know what it's like to travel as a, small, woman. Because I'm neither small nor female. So, I'm always fascinated by that, because to me, there's a certain amount of... I guess, no other way to put it, bravery that's necessary to sort of go, okay, I'm going somewhere I don't know by myself. So walk me through that. Okay,
so I know previous to leaving, I just want to make this clear for everyone. I'm not a huge outdoors person. I'm making that transition between car camping and trekking. So I'm not somebody who has taken all these crazy intense courses or that I have gone on these crazy treks. I am making that transition.
We're fixing that.
Yes. So this is when I met Winston, and he helped me by doing our bushcraft nights, right? Showed me proper technique, how to build a fire, right? And get the confidence to get out there. So I think that was one of the biggest things for me, was just feeling comfortable in myself to do it. And I remember before I left, I was saying to him, man, everyone keeps saying to me, but you're the small little girl. Why remember I was... Yeah. Yeah, and it drove me nuts. That drove me crazy, because just because I'm small does not mean I cannot do these things, Obviously, you're out there by yourself and you get scared. That is, you get scared going from place to place. And when you're out in the wilderness on your own and it's just you by yourself, I think the main part for me was, so part of the W obviously goes in the shape of a W, right? And I was at a camp here called Camp Italiano, and then I had to hike up to Camp Britannico and then make my way back down to Cuernos. And this was the recommended no pack day, but I decided I'm going to do it with the pack. Really stupid idea.
They're always the best ideas.
Yeah, this was no, this was a stupid idea. But so lots of rock scrambling. And for you, those that have done that, you definitely know what that feels like on your knees. That is quite the feeling. And there was a lot of times when I just kind of had to sit there and, you start getting in your head where, what the fuck am I, hell, whatever.
Yeah. It's the internet. We can swear. Fuck.
Yeah. What are you doing though, right? You're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. Why did I decide to do this? Your knees kill. And you just want to break from your head, because it's this constant battle of you going back and forth. You can do this. No, you can't. You can do it. No, you can't. Right? And then eventually I just kept going. And then I met this guide, Ruth. And she kind of helped me get to the next camp. She just was like, let's try it. And I was like, okay. And just having a little bit of that distraction, I forgot about the pain in my knees. And it was crazy, because it completely went away just by having somebody to talk to, right? And it really makes you aware of how much you need to believe in yourself and not compare yourself to others. Because there were some other people doing this trek. I mean, they didn't have weight, but they were moving so quick. And I'm like, oh, I'm a snail. Yeah, so that's what I think the hiking experience was what really... set in with me as far as doing it solo. The rest of it was cool, like meeting people, saying bye to people, but being out there alone in the mountains, that's definitely a feeling that I love. So, yeah.
So, and this is always, again, it's sort of curiosity, because it's just not an experience I'll ever have. Do you deal with creepy guys, that sort of thing. Because, again, it's sort of the woman traveling on her own. Like, Katie's looking to go to Morocco, and we're coming up, there's going to be a period by herself. So we're trying to come up with a game plan, because it's not a country that, a cute little blonde girl wants to be walking around the streets by herself in. Mm-hmm. And we've sort of got something figured out, go to the hostels, make a bunch of friends, because Katie makes friends wherever she goes, and then only go places in a group, So tip for you, if you're traveling by yourself, make friends, because then you can go places not by yourself. If you're in sort of like, especially as young women, you can go out in areas that might not be as, safe for you by yourself. You can get out, like, if there's half a dozen of you, or 3 or 4, and particularly, like, if it's a mixed group, you get a few guys, you run into the thing where you're less of a target, either for the thieves or for just, because let's just be honest, some of the most wonderful, like, interesting places in the world to go aren't the friendliest to women.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't keep you from going. Just be smart.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I didn't go out at midnight roaming the streets on my own, There was one night actually where I had taken a plane, I had just landed, and it was 12 o'clock at night. I'm trying to get to my hostel. My hostel had canceled my reservation on me, and that was a scary moment for me, because I'm like, I don't have anywhere to stay. I'm in a cab now, trying to find a hostel, going from hostel to hostel, and this cab driver could do whatever to me. Nobody would know, right? But I think it's just being smart about it, right? Like, I'm not going to go out into the street and get into a cab that isn't an official cab at that time at night, right? I'm going to get one at the airport that I know is a safe, not just a random guy, right? So I think just little things like that to be mindful of, and yeah, you'll be okay. Yeah.
But that's sort of the big thing. And while obviously in certain countries, women are a little bit more vulnerable than maybe guys are, there's a lot of, manageable dangers, if you want to say. And this goes for guys or girls. Like, say for Mexico, we're in North America, so Mexico's kind of an exotic but not too far away place to go. You don't go near the border, right? That's where all the gang violence is. You get down through, Mexico City. Obviously, there's crime issues and what have you, but it's got a good tourism structure, and basically you don't have the sort of the gang wars going on to the same level that you do at the border. Same thing down in the Yucatan Peninsula. So if you take a country as a whole, if somebody's coming to Canada, they're going to go to Toronto, and this only will sort of apply to people who know Toronto, but yet as a tourist, at night you don't go hang around the Jane Finch corridor, if anybody happens to know. It's kind of a bit of a sketchy part of Toronto. Mm-hmm, but if you want it at night, walk along Queen, walk along Yonge, walk along the lakeshore, that's all perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Right? So it's even in a westernized country like Canada, there's still places to be smart and not go at night. Jane Finch, don't go in the day either. It's kind of, very sketch. But that's one of those things that, particularly nowadays with the internet, you basically, and you probably ran into this, while, the mountains and all of those types of things are a whole different beast when you're actually there, you probably had a good idea of what your game plan was because of being able to research now on the internet before you went.
Yeah, definitely. Like even that info session, right? Be just actively trying to inform yourself before you go somewhere. That's obviously one of the biggest things you want to do. I didn't have a set schedule. I'm not somebody who plans my every single move.
Yeah, because if she did, she wouldn't work with us.
Yes.
There's a whole lot of seat of pants going on our trips.
Yeah, and that's what makes it enjoyable, right? Because I like talking to the locals. I like hearing what they have to recommend, talking to other travelers, because sometimes you meet up with them and then you decide, I'm going to this place with this person. I just kind of knew where I wanted to go and had an idea of what I needed as far as gear and this goes. And then even things like packing my own food for 5 days, right? I hadn't done that before because car camping, right?
Yeah.
So even learning how to do that and in a comfortable way, and how to pack your pack properly for it, and preparing for that in a way that in research, right? So, because things like water. So in this park, Torres del Paine, it's fresh glacier water. So you're not gonna be carrying a ton of water with you. And some people were carrying like a ton of water with them, and that's just extra weight that there's no need for you to carry, because you can just literally go up to a stream, put your bottle in, and drink right from it. That is super clean water.
You should see, she brought a ton home. She's selling it now, competing with Nestle. So, and one of the things you run into as well, is with my little joke derailed what I was thinking. Basically, as far as the layout goes, or not, I don't want to say the layout, but like the prep for trekking. Obviously, you got yourself some gear, because I know, like, I talked to you about going camping with a friend of yours last summer, and you were complaining about freezing.
Yeah.
Because, and then it's like, when I'm picking your brain, it's like, oh, you got a sleeping bag, you're in a tent, it wasn't that cold, okay, why are you, and then we discovered that you didn't use a sleeping pad.
Yeah.
So, what kind of things, like, I'm assuming you took a sleeping pad.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did take a sleeping pad. Yeah.
So those kinds of little evolutions, like, what kind of things did you find that beforehand you went, oh, okay, and that made things better, like you learned a few things, and then what kind of things did you learn during where you go, okay, next trek I do, these things I'm doing?
Yeah. So one thing, the sleeping pad was obviously one of the big ones. I wasn't using a sleeping pad, was always just on a sleeping bag, and yeah, I was getting cold like that. The other thing was walking poles. A lot of people do not use walking poles, and I swear by these things now, because of that downhill experience. I felt so much relief on my knees once I started to actually use these poles. So I think that's a big thing that people should consider, despite how silly you feel with these, like, you're poking around. When you first start using them, you're like, just poking around, it feels weird. But the other thing too, remember I was telling you about my the stuff sack?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my pack, at the bottom, I have a Osprey aerial pack, and at the bottom of it, there's a compartment for your sleeping bag. And you don't need to use your stuff sack for this. You can just stuff your sleeping bag in there. But I didn't know, so I put it inside my stuff sack, and then I was trying to put it inside my bag. And every morning I would wake up and do this, and it just was a absolute fight with my bag. So next time I know, I can just take my sleeping bag outside of the stuff sack and stuff it in the bottom, and I will not have to fight nearly as much.
Yeah.
It's little things like that, right? And then even my rain cover, the winds in the Patagonia region, they reach like 110 kilometers per hour. They're just like knock you over kind of winds. And hearing my rain cover while hiking was just the most annoying thing. It was so annoying. So switching to like a garbage bag just on the inside of it, that really helped too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if somebody wants to do that, because obviously you need to waterproof your gear, and basically there's and I work in an outdoor store, but I'm going to say the outdoor industry approach, because they want to sell you more stuff, is a dry stuff sack, compression sack to put your sleeping bag in, dry bags for all your things. Whereas the budget way to go is get trash compactor garbage bags and just line your whole pack with one. And just and use the trash compactor ones because they're meant for like this machine to pump garbage into. So they're super strong, so they don't rip. They're cheap and they're pretty light. You can either put that in your pack, line the whole pack. So Amabel was talking. You take your excuse me, take your sleeping bag and just stuff it to the bottom. Then your sleeping pad on top of that, if it's not strapped to the outside. Then, you can put your clothes, and then your cook kit, your personal hygiene kit. Because really, outside of that, that's sort of your biggest things. Because, like, usually for me, in the top lid is where I'll keep my first aid kit. And then your food bag on top of all that. Because what you want to have, like when you're packing your pack, your heaviest items, and your food bag a lot of times is one of the heaviest, is you want it high and close to your body. And that then loads that weight down onto your hips. So if you basically pack all the things that you want to keep dry, because your food is all in plastic bags of some sort, so you can even have it in a dry stuff sack. But then what I'll do is, whether you're using the trash compactor bag or like a siliconized nylon or Ultrasil pack liner, then once it's all full, roll the top down, and if it's one of the garbage bags, twist the top, and I'll, with a string, tie a bow around it. Mm-hmm. Now you throw your pack in a lake, it'll float. So for very low cost, because if you get like one of the pack liners, Sea to Summit or any of these companies, you're looking at about, $40 for a pack liner. Compactor trash bags are far less than that. But now, it's waterproofed everything, and you don't have to worry about a rain cover. You're doing a stream crossings or a river crossing, you slip and fall. Everything in your pack doesn't get soaked. And your pack doesn't sink to the bottom of the river or the lake, whatever you fell into. So it's those types of things. Like when you begin, first get into it, expect, like, say for, a week-long trip, you're probably going to be carrying 50, 60 pounds. Because it's that thing, and we've all been through it, where it's like, oh, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and I need this. And, one of the rules, if you go on a trip, and other than a few items, like, say, a first aid kit, if I go on a trip and I don't use something, and unless it was something very specific, say like a snow shovel, for digging out a camp, and I just didn't happen to need it, but in snow conditions, if there's something I took with me and I don't use it, I don't take it next time. Obviously if it's different weather conditions or what have you, or where you're going dependent, but if it's sort of the same kind of environment and you're going again, don't take it. Like, why carry stuff you're not going to need? And it takes time. In the beginning, like, I encourage everybody, overpack. Obviously, it's a little more work and all that kind of stuff. But until you've developed sort of like that system where you know what you need, it's better to be a little over-prepared and not get in trouble. But you'll find that. Because, like, did you have, like, as far as this trip goes, like, what gear did you take that was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I have this?
Well, first off, I overpacked, like a crap ton. Way too much clothes. My tent was by far my favorite thing. I have the MSR Elixir 2, and I absolutely love it. It stood up really well with the wind. There were some other people, first night it was pretty windy and raining, and there were some other people who their poles had broken, and their tents were just flapping around. And mine felt really sturdy, so I was happy about that. I really liked my tent. My sleeping bag as well. The sleeping bag is I wish it was shorter though, because I have the long version, so I definitely wish that it was shorter.
Which bag did you get?
The Teton.
Oh, okay.
The Marmot Teton. But it's too long for me, so I wish it was shorter. But it kept me warm. It kept me warm, and I know my friend the next day was complaining that they were cold. And my liner, I absolutely love my liner. Anyone that's traveling, your liner, just a simple silk liner, just gives you so much peace of mind. Some days I stayed in a $3 hostel because that was the only place I could find in Peru, and it just was sketchy. Like, there was Vietnam written on the wall. It was like, yeah, but this liner just made me feel okay to sleep on the bed, because it just, that little barrier just made that much of a difference where it made me feel cleaner.
Yeah.
So those would, I would say out of all of them, my liner was one of my favorite things, though. Because even when you're on a bus, right? Like, you're cold, you just wrap your little liner around you, and then, yeah.
Cool. And what things did you take with you that you go, okay, no, I'm not taking this next time?
So I brought this container from, I forget the company. I think it's like Fire. You know that company, Fire. So, those blue containers where everything fits.
Oh,
inside?
the Light My Fire.
Yeah, the Light My Fire ones.
Oh, they're little.
Yeah,
mess
the
kits.
little little mess kits, and it just was extra weight. I didn't really use it. I didn't really use that at all. So that was probably one thing. And then what else didn't I use as much? I'd say that would be the main thing. I brought a hydration pack, but I found that it was actually hard to fill with water, because when you're at a stream and you're trying to fill it, it would like overfill, and then it would just. So I usually just ended up using my Nalgene most of the time, and also that they get pretty dirty, the hydration packs.
Yeah.
Like the tubes and that. When you're traveling, I'm not going to stop and clean it.
Live again.
Live again. Okay, so we're here talking about our travels and the things that we do, the lifestyles that we want to live, and that we're trying to help encourage people to live those lifestyles, right? I think one of the main things that I want to get across is why. Why it is that we're doing what we're doing, why it is that Winston's taking time out of his day to teach people about bushcraft. Why it is that somebody like Katie is going to Morocco on her own, being a small female, right? Why it is that I'd ever want to rock climb a face, right? So for me, I think one of the things that when I was trapped in my head and by myself, the thing that really helped me was remembering why I wanted to do those things, right? So I just want to know, Winston, why it is that Winston and Katie are doing the PCT.
Yes.
So that is, when is that happening?
Sort of beginning of August, July. One of the things you run into, and you will see in the different videos, if you see Katie, she's a wonderful person, and you just very quickly just accept that Katie's schedule is it's very fluid.
Non-existent.
Yeah, because I've got as far as us starting the PCT, we're going north to south. Essentially, our goal is to outrun winter, and that's why we're doing it that way, because of the timing. But because she's tree planting in British Columbia this summer, she's got about a 3-week window where she could be done. It's I could be done here, or it could take as long as this. Mm-hmm. Makes it difficult for me booking a plane ticket. So, conveniently, my brother lives in Edmonton, and he said, hey, come visit. So that part's super cool. So I will be starting my travels, showering regularly, because once we're on the PCT, which, for those of you who don't know, is the Pacific Crest Trail, if done in the orthodox fashion, goes from the border of Mexico north to the border of Canada, through California, through the Mojave Desert, actually skirts LA, goes through the Sierra Nevada Mountains, the Cascade Mountains, and then up to Canada. A little over 4,000 kilometers. It is one of the 3 monument trails, because there's the Appalachian Trail, which I've done before. There's the Continental Divide Trail that goes Mexico to Canada, through the Rockies, and then the Pacific Crest Trail, which does the West Coast. And being that the prevalence of brown bears, or as a lot of people know them, grizzly bears, is more Rockies, less coastal range. And that's not the only reason, but that's part of the reason we're doing the PCT. But really, I got to credit Katie as far as the why, or why I'm doing it anyway. Because we'd done a camping trip, like a survival camping trip, where you go into the bush with just a day pack, like you're just out hiking, and then you pretend you're lost. So you have to, make a shelter and start a fire and all of these things, but just with the crap you would bring with you on a day hike. You have to purify water. You have to, all the different things that you would learn in a wilderness survival course, you actually have to practice. We stayed out 2 nights, tons and tons of stories that, you guys heard them. Super fun. But it's challenging because you're building, you're working, Now the fact is we'd gone in August, so truly worst case scenario, because the second night got to 10 degrees and raining, which could get you into hypothermia. Mm-hmm. The first night was just cool, like I think it was about 12 degrees, but clear. So Katie could have gotten in it, like if she didn't have at least the right clothes, could have potentially started to get hypothermic at that. I could sit in my underpants at those temperatures and just be uncomfortable. I do have the nickname of the human furnace, so, so it's not like it was life-threatening conditions, so it was a fun way to practice. But side story anyway. A couple weeks later, I remember this so distinctly, because at the outdoor store that we work at, and right now they're not paying us, so we're not mentioning it, but we could. We're available for sponsorships. At that point, I worked in the footwear department. I distinctly remember, because we're not supposed to have our phones, I have my ringer turned off, but it vibrates. It's in my pocket. It vibrates. I'm walking into the back room. It's where, all the boxes of shoes are. I was kind of like the outdoor Al Bundy. And I check my phone. It's a message from Katie. Hey, next summer, want to do the PCT with me and Taylor. Taylor's a friend of hers, who she was heading off to Southeast Asia very shortly. And my response is like, you better not be joking, because I might have to hurt you. And from there, it was one of these things where it's like, yeah. And now it's a case where Taylor might come for a week or 2, but turns out that getting 5 months off her job, they frown on that kind of thing. And basically, Katie and I, Amabel, Andrea, who is sort of sitting off camera, kind of our production supervisor, and a few other people, we are all working for the idea of being no fixed address. So being unfettered, but it doesn't mean, being dirtbags, although when we're out on these big trips, we kind of are dirtbags. You should have seen Amabel's legs when she hit. Cut?
Cut. Oh, we're cutting. Cut.
Anyway, you didn't see the edit there. Yeah. And once we didn't show her, but we introduced Andrea, who was effectively being our production supervisor for this kind of ghetto video shoot.
In the kitchen.
Yep. Eventually, we're going to take a little space for a studio and all that kind of stuff when we do sort of sit downs like this. But everybody starts somewhere. She was very, very professionally holding in a choking cough.
Trooper.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of this telling us to cut, and so we did. But we're back. It started off with Katie saying, "Hey, you want to go with Taylor and I, do the PCT?" Yes. That's my text motion with my fat thumbs. Then we ran into the thing where she says, "Okay, well, we're probably going to be pretty slow," and it's like, I don't care. Do we get to go live essentially in the mountains for a long period of time and go on adventures? Because I think one of the things, and we've talked about this as far as climbing goes, people sometimes get wrapped up in the numbers. Like if you're through hiking, and the reality is, it's like you sometimes have to cover a certain amount of miles, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to even approach getting the whole thing done. But the idea that your day has to be so regimented that, I've got to get this many miles today, or if you're rock climbing, it's like, there are people that have a mindset where it's like, you're not climbing at this grade, you suck. or, not seeing any of these things as your own personal journey. Like last night we were in the climbing gym and we took 2 new people. And like Sammy, who, is a friend of ours working on this project as well, she'd never been indoor rock climbing before. And she was worried people were going to point and think she, make fun of her and blah, blah, blah. Well, the reality is when you're worried about, I don't want to do something because I want people to make fun of me. One of the things to realize is that generally speaking, nobody cares about you. And I don't say that in a bad way.
No, but yeah,
but that idea that people are caught up in themselves. So it's like, you're dancing to the beat of your own drummer. Yeah, your immediate friends and family, care what you're doing, or hopefully do. But you run into the thing where that's not sort of what's going to drive you to do or not do, right? It's like, oh, but what if those people make fun of me? Yeah. Then fuck those people. But in a long, looping way, to bring it back to what Amabel asked me, which is, why do I do it? There's a bunch of individual things I can point to. You feel sort of a sense of freedom, and there's a sense of adventure, and there's at different times an adrenaline rush, and a sense of connection, to nature. Like when the last camping trip, I did at the beginning of February, went down the Allegheny National Forest. We drove down Friday night, so we ended up getting there at 3 a.m. And so what we did was set up, because the trail goes down the side of a mountain, and trying to hike in to where there's an official camp. Doing that in the middle of the night we weren't going to do. We were both tired. I was down with Katie. And so we just hung up a hammock. I jerry-rigged some insulation under it. Turns out not quite enough, because we kind of had warm tops and cool bottoms. Didn't put a tarp over it. And so, and even one of these, because the hillside is going down at an angle like this, and we've got it swirling between the 2 trees, I had Katie get in her sleeping bag, pull it up to her head, and I just physically just picked her up and put her in the hammock. And then I went uphill a little bit, got in my sleeping bag, positioned myself. We slept because of one of these giant double hammocks. Her head facing one way, my head facing the other. And no tarp over top. So when you look up at the sky, all you saw was stars. Right? You wake up in the morning and it's because it was this really crisp morning, you look up through the treetops and it's this blue sky. That's part of the reason you do it, right? That connection to nature, seeing stars that you don't see in the city, hearing sounds you don't hear. On that particular trip, we went to bed at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, because, when you're out in the backcountry, you have the schedule of old people, you eat dinner at 4:35 and go to bed at 8, because you're tied to the rising and fall of the sun. And obviously this time of year, you don't have long daylight. So we ran into the thing of we go to bed, and at about, it was 3:20 in the morning, because we specifically, I checked the time when this happened. I get woken, there's a noise to my right. Now, if you can picture this, we're not sleeping in a tent. We put up a tarp shelter, sort of an open front plow point. If you watch the video of our trip to the Alleghenies, you'll see that setup. And then essentially we're in mummy bags, we're undercover, we're out of the wind. But if you've been in a mummy bag, the only thing sticking out is your face. And you got no hands to protect yourself because they're all cocooned inside. So I hear something fair size is going through the brush beside us and knock something over. And that sort of meandering kind of pace and, what have you, my first thought is bear. Because we're in bear country, and I've had bears come through camp before. But then I hear a sound opposite us, on the opposite side. So, the first one was to my right, the next one was to my left. And then it's one of these things of okay, well, bears usually don't go in packs, so it's probably coyotes. And so I nudge Katie. Katie, do you hear that? And she's like, dreaming, sleeping. Oh, I hear that. And she just like all of a sudden is awake. What is that? It's like, I think it's probably coyotes. So let's get up, get a fire going. At least we're up in a better position because we've got animals on either side of us. Our feet essentially are facing the lake or the Allegheny Reservoir, and the mountainside just goes up behind us. So on either side of us, there's animals, and then there's a giant hill behind us. So it's one of these things where it's like, okay, we get up, get the fire going. We sort of left it smoldering. So we roll a couple logs over, throw some stuff in, and, she came right back to life. And, but just before once we made the decision to get up, what we hear is, "Arr!" And it felt they were close. And it was sort of like that sound, like they were on top of us. And it's like, yeah, good plan to get up. We get the fire going, and then we both look around the hillside. And I first spot there's eyes shining over here. Then Katie looks, sees a pair here. I turn around and look halfway behind us. There's two coyotes sitting side by side looking at us. And so there's these, at minimum, we saw 4 total.
And this is, what time is it?
3:20 in the morning.
Oh, man.
So we got 7 hours sleep, so, it wasn't too bad. But again, that could be a little scary, gives you a little bit of an adrenaline rush. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you understand the behavior, like, they're curious. It wasn't super snowed in, because it wasn't snowed in at all. It was weird, because the ground was so frozen, I couldn't drive aluminum tent pegs into the ground. So we used logs to hold up our shelter, or like to tie off our shelter. The reservoir was frozen, but there was no snow on the ground. So it was one of those super cool, kind of weird, weather anomalies. Because usually those temperatures, that kind of conditions, that area, there'd be 2 or 3 feet of snow. Because when we originally planned this trip, it was going to be a snowshoeing trip, like winter camping. But then we ran into the thing of there was no winter. It was cold enough for winter, because like the second night I think got down to minus 17 Celsius. But you just didn't have snow. So, and I think with that, it just means the coyotes are able to forage and catch catch prey easier. So I don't think that we're going to be, super aggressive and hungry. But, very long-winded way of talking about the why. And one of the biggest things with that is you feel alive. Like, because all these different things, I like this part about it, and this part about it, and this part about it. You basically feel alive, like 100% alive in the moment. And the parts that are hard, like Amabel's talking about, sort of fighting your own demons, because it's not easy. Like if you're doing, a big trek of any sort that wasn't just some sort of guided tour, and hey, if you want to do those, go nuts. Like we don't judge. But like the stuff we're doing, there's times you're uncomfortable. There's times you're cold. There's times where it's like 3 days in a row of pouring rain, so nothing is dry. You've got mold growing on you because you haven't been dry in days. Mm-hmm. I won't say that that's fun, but the more difficult the trip or more difficult the endeavor, the better story it ends up being. Because if somebody goes, "Oh man, how did your trip go?" Yeah, everything went perfect. Perfect weather. I found everything properly. The campsites everywhere were perfectly fine. Everything was fine. Boring. That's a boring story. Yeah. But the other thing, though, is that is what tests you. That's what, you find out what you're made of, right? And the fact is, every time you subject yourself to challenges and difficulty, not only does it test what you're made of and show you, but it changes you. It makes you more than you were before. And what I run into with it is I find that regularly subjecting yourself to challenges and it's not about somebody else. It's not about what somebody else accomplished, right? It's not a comparison. It's just you. Are you better today than you were yesterday, right?
Yeah, I think that's a hard part too, though, right? With this adventure seeing, let's say right now, is that a lot of people have access to YouTube. A lot of people have access to these different social medias, and like my Instagram is bombarded with people doing awesome things on a daily basis. I'm seeing people climb El Capitan, people climb Everest, whatever the case may be, and it's easy to feel small like that, right? It's easy to feel like, this trek was so small in comparison to an Everest trek, which it is. I mean, completely different levels. But the difference is that this is accepting where you're at and where you want to be, and just trying to close that gap, but being realistic about where you're at. I know I'm not at that Everest stage, and not that I totally want to be at the Everest stage, but just accepting that and being okay with that, but progressively trying to be better at the same time. So I think for me, that is a lot of my why comes down to just the fact that I do these things, and it helps me believe in myself at the same point, and that translates into my everyday life. So being able to hike from point A to point B, whether it be short or long, on your own, but that just gives you a newfound confidence that maybe sometimes you didn't have before that. So that is definitely a big why for me, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and I don't remember where I heard this, but I'm not claiming any credit for coming up with it, but when I heard it, it was like one of the most brilliant things, is be proud of what you've done, but never satisfied. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's a thing. It's like, and the reality comes in is that if you compare yourself, like particularly like if you take Instagram or something like that, yeah, right, and you're a climber, so if you compare yourself to like a Lynn Hill or a Chris Sharma or right, it's like the average guy that plays a little bit of pickup hockey comparing himself to the guys from the NHL. These are professional athletes. Oh, interrupted by the phone. Bear with me for 1 second. This is what happens when you do it in your kitchen. See, that's like a real landline. So I don't have a dismiss button, so I just picked it up and hung up. Anybody who matters is going to call my cell phone. So the only people that call that are either my brother, who I don't want to talk to, not the nice brother who's hosting me out in Edmonton, by the way, Chris, but the other one who I have to talk to too much and never shuts up. But he would not be calling me in the middle of the day anyway. And then telemarketers. And yeah, because otherwise I would just make fun of them. Which might be a whole different YouTube channel we launch, which is just all of us making fun of telemarketers. Can you tell me more about that? Okay.
I won.
Man, like I'm excited. Like, so that timeshare, like I'm really both a practicing Scientologist and a vampire. So do you make a lot allowances for basically having like black garbage bags over the windows, because I'm a vampire, so in daylight I'll burst into flame. I've done that one. When you get the telemarketer hanging up on you,
side trail right now.
It is. Little side trail, but sometimes the side trails are most interesting.
All right. Well, there you go.
But back to the thing.
The unknown.
Yeah. We're explorers. But that thing of, being proud of what you've accomplished, but not satisfied, and not comparing yourself to other people, right? Because, again, it's one of those things, like, I'm a big fan of, mixed martial arts. I've done jiu-jitsu and judo and wrestled and blah, 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 right? Do I have any illusion that if I was to step in a ring, even like with the 145-pound champion, and I'm right now sitting around 200 pounds, I would have a hope in hell? No. These guys are like I could step in the ring with like the women's 135-pound champion and get my ass handed to me, right? So it's one of these things. It's like, and I'm perfectly fine with that. They are the best of the best, and this is what they do for a living, And so when you start looking at that and going, whether it's you're lifting some weights, you're climbing, anything that's got some sort of measurement, right? Because climbing has grades. Obviously if you're lifting weights, it's got a number on it. Can you bench press 600 pounds? it's 600 pounds, right? Like, it's a thing you measure. And so you run into the deal where you look and go, oh, well, I can't do that, so I suck. No, it's like, it's your journey. It's not anybody else's. And if you can get that sort of, not just in your head, because we all understand that, but if you can get it, sort of, I don't want to say your heart, because that's, just an organ that pumps blood around your body, but you get the point I'm making.
Yeah,
if you can believe it.
Yeah, if you can believe it. And I think, too, the big thing is who you surround yourself with, right? Who you surround yourself with in these environments, because realistically, you're in a vulnerable state, right? You're hiking in the backcountry. There's tons of things that could go wrong. It's even like us talking about blame the other day, right? How I'm like, yeah, I let some people blame me, and like I was thinking about that. Realistically, who you surround yourself by makes a big difference, particularly in this lifestyle, because it can really change your progression and how quick you progress and what direction you progress, if that makes sense. So, Winston, for example, right? Like, well-knowledged man. This is like, well-known, right? There you go. But just being able to meet somebody like that who can help me with basic things like fire skills and learning how to make a tarp, right? Those things, when you are out in the backcountry, I have this little voice sometimes where it's like, oh yeah, I'll just tie that knot, or oh yeah, right? But finding those people that are encouraging, but at the same time that they're not unrealistic about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So somebody, you don't downplay a scenario to me. You don't say to me like, oh, nothing's gonna happen, like, no, you tell me to be prepared. Mm-hmm. And that's when you're realistic when it comes to that, and that's something that I really respect. So yeah, who you surround yourself by.
Well, one of the things you'll run into too, and you'll find, if you watch our videos, I've got certain way of thinking about things in life. And when you're out in the backcountry, because I've run into this where, like, I've gone on trips with people that you didn't gel with. They didn't have the same attitude or vibe about it that I did, and it doesn't make it fun. Because one of the things that I run into with the people that I go out with is I kind of think of them as part of my wolf pack. And it's this idea of like
the big bad wolf.
Yeah, but the idea that you're not, and you can call it a team, you can call it a family, but it's not just a random group of people going off and doing something. It's basically a case where you're out there together, you're looking after each other, you're checking on each other. If people in the group are, because especially if the trips are long enough, there's going to be days you have a bad day. Mm-hmm. It's the people that support you and bring you up and look after you, and you do the same to them. It's a much greater environment to be in.
Okay, so what was the question again? My family. How did my family take it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, background on my family. Conservative parents, hardworking parents, right? Dad came here from El Salvador, mom from Nicaragua. We're in Canada now. But the idea that I would want to travel to a country like Chile or Peru and sleep in a tent, walk around with a backpack seems absolutely absurd to my parents. It seems, why would somebody ever want to do that? When I have a bed at home, I have food at home, why would I want to work for a year and a half at 2 jobs to do that? They just could not wrap their head around that. And I understand that because with my size, right, I'm a smaller female, and I get that I'm exposing myself. That's the main thing that my mother would always say to me. You're exposing yourself to something that...
Not in the way you might think, by the way.
No, yeah, to something that you do not need. You're putting yourself at risk for no reason, basically, was her thought. So, which I understand, right? Because you don't want anything to happen to somebody that you love and care for. And it was hard to be around kind of that negativity and still believe that you could do it. Because all these doubts start filling your head. yeah, I'm small, things could really happen. What if I run out of money? Oh my gosh, am I going to have to call my parents if I run out of money and ask them for help? Are they going to help me? You know, all these things start piling up. And then also the fact that, you know, they want to see me in a steady career. They want to see me be in a career, and I want to travel and rock climb and make that into a lifestyle that I can make into a career. So that, I think, is one of the hardest parts. I mean, my friends are awesome. They're really solid about supporting me. And my sisters as well have kind of switched that leaf now that I'm back, because they see how much it did for me. But how can anyone say that life experience isn't experience, right? Like, you don't, what I can get out of traveling, I can't get out of working the same job for 2 years, where I'm just living day to day in this routine, boring lifestyle, living for money, to work and die. Like,
right.
That to me, just no.
And it's the thing. It's like, I've been down that path. You know, I ran my own business, and you know, one of the things, and people sort of say my view on this is a little extreme, but generally speaking, in the Western world, we say that we've done away with slavery, but what we really have done, and I say this we collectively, is put the things in place to make people put themselves into slavery. Because when you've got that monthly car payment, when you've got that mortgage payment, when you've got that cell phone bill, the cable bill, the water bill, you maybe run up your credit cards, right? They give you, like, and it's just the way that the system is set up, they want you in debt. Like, banks, credit card companies, all of these things, they make money off your debt. So if you're somebody who doesn't get in debt, they don't like you because you're not profitable for them. So, but the fact is like, the biggest stress most people have in the Western world is managing their debt, right? It's like, oh God, how am I going to pay that bill? Well, if you've divested yourself of that kind of stuff, because like myself, the only sort of stuck monthly bill I have is my $36 phone bill. You know, and it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
But, you know, and it's the thing. It's like, over the last 5 years, I've been trying to engineer my life so that, you know, I'm still making money. I work. But it's not sort of a thing that I'm tied to where everything would fall apart if I went away on a trip. When you own your own business, that is like a brick and mortar business where you have to be at a certain place at a certain time to open the doors. When you go away, like if I was to go away for 4 months, it falls apart. Whereas, you know, if you take something like this, you know, basically we're creating content about adventure. So if you really think about it, going away on adventures is just business. You know, and whether this, you know, grows into something that we can live off of, or it just helps offset the gear bills, because guess what, we all like nice stuff, that's perfectly fine. But it's that thing where when you have a certain number, you know, of commitments that have to be paid every month, that's what you're working for, right? And is that what you want to work for? Because, you know, people talk about a house. Oh, it's a great investment. Well, you know, sit down and do the math. It's not the greatest investment in the world. You know, it's a forced investment because you have to make your payments or you lose your place to live. But if you took the same money, you know, that you were going to pay into a mortgage, rent a smaller place, and then put that into, you know, mutual funds, you'd make more money after a while. But neither here nor there. You're not coming to me for investment advice.
Yeah, but then it's also like, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? Because now we're talking like downsizing your house, downsizing your costs. My friends go out every weekend, right? Like, I want to hit up those clubs and
you should see her dance.
Drink, yeah.
And you are one of the most fun drunks I've ever hung out with.
Right? But it's like, what are you? Am I willing to lay off on the partying for a while so that I can do it while I'm on vacation? Yes, I am more than willing to do that. Basic things like, hey, I don't need a new sweater every week. right? Just that, right?
Yeah.
Like downsizing, because when you're saying downsizing your house, right? I think that seems drastic for most people because they have the idea of this big house, but like even little things like not eating out as much.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and again, when we're talking about the financial part of it, I have a cell phone, but I didn't get a data plan because I pay $36 instead of $80 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And there's enough Wi-Fi around when I got to get on the internet. I can get on the internet. And besides, how many cats playing piano do you actually have to see? Then you run into the thing of, as Amabel said, a little less eating out, a little less this, a little less that. You're not suffering, right? The fact is, and I put myself in this as well, we're all too damn soft, right? It's human beings, and this is the magnificent thing about human beings, is that whatever environment you put us into, we'll adapt. But we also will adapt to luxury, right? So you get something you've never had before that's awesome, and after you've had it for a little while, it's like, oh, I can't live without that. Whether it's having a hot tub in your house.
Travel bug.
Yeah.
Right? You go on your first trip and you haven't experienced it, and all of a sudden you're hooked and you just want to keep the ball rolling, right? That's...
And I guess because that's what we're in support of, we say that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. This is a good thing.
But again, it comes into the thing. It's like, there's this great quote from Henry Rollins. He's one of my idols. If you watch any of his spoken word, all words are spoken. I guess it could be written, but either way, whatever. But his quote is something along the lines of, you don't have free time, you don't have extra time, you don't have next time, you have lifetime, don't waste it. Like, that's one of those ones from like one of the godfathers of punk rock.
Yeah.
It's like, and he also says the key to world peace, in a very long-winded way, is travel and great music. And basically, his formula is when he travels, he takes a 1 terabyte hard drive of music with him and shares it with people everywhere he goes. It's like, oh, you haven't heard of like Iggy Pop and the Stooges? Oh, well, you have to listen to this. Oh, and you haven't listened to this before? Oh, you got to hear this, right? And one of the greatest stories he has is the whole thing of, because he did not like George W. Bush during, basically before Obama, Iraq wars and 9/11 and nuclear and, all of that stuff. Was not a big fan. And so when they started trotting out the idea that Iran was the big threat, Henry, being sort of a once a punk rocker, always a punk rocker, and the punk rockers say, fuck authority, his first thing was contact his travel agent and go, I want to go to Iran. So he goes to Iran, and he meets the people. And pretty much his thing is, and he's gone to Pakistan, he's gone, the guy travels all over the world all the time. And he goes to these sometimes scary sounding places by himself, and his big thing was to go, you people are awesome. Like, stand in the middle of a market, and somebody, finally sort of looks at this, like, tattooed, American guy, and come up and is like, hello? And his thing is like, hi, I'm Henry. I came here to meet you. And the guy's like, what? Because they speak English, or some of them do. And it's sort of like getting talking. It's like, do you like music? And the guy's like, yeah. How do you get your music? Oh, we gotta smuggle it almost, because it is basically a religious theocracy in the country. So Henry smuggles the music. Well, guess what? You meet those people, you eat with those people, you've lived with those people for a while. You know what the last thing on your mind is? When you go, oh man, so-and-so in that country, they are great people. You don't want to drop bombs on them, right? Because they're not strangers. They're not foreigners, right? They're not other. They're people, right? And some of them are going to be assholes. Some of them are super sweet. And one of the things that we all have to differentiate is that the people are not their government. Because how many times, whatever country you're from, how many times has your government done something where you go, that's shitty? That's not me. I don't like what my government's doing. But you want people of other countries going, let's kill all those people because that's what their government did. No. It's like we sort of have to make that differentiation. Because I go down to the States. Some Americans, are a little bit, we'll say, fans of Donald Trump. And then others aren't. It's a country of 330 million people. I've been down into the hills of Kentucky and met real life, kind of backwoods hillbilly people, and they were the sweetest people I ever met. Complete strangers. They invite you over to camp in their yard, and they feed you and
bourbon
and out came the moonshine. Good Lord, that was good. But again, it's the thing where you're going, oh, well, those people and, whatever, people get all dismissive. It's like they're great people. And everywhere you go, you went into South America, right? As far as a ratio goes of the people you met, how many were ones where you're like, man, I can't believe these people are awesome, they're sweet, they're kind, they're generous, and how many were total tool bags?
I can't even think of somebody that I met that I was like, oh my gosh, get me away from this person, or that a moment where I felt unsafe around somebody. And it's there's a stereotypical drug dealer, drug lords, South America, cocaine, and that's kind of the stereotypical. When I said I was going, that's what my some friends would say that. And I mean, some of these people, I was having home cooked meals with them. A lady, I met her in a hostel. She worked at the hostel. She invited me to have dinner at her house, and it just, they were so welcoming. And another lady that I met while doing a trek in Peru, was financially unstable, right? She did not have the economic means that I have or that we are privileged to have here, and she shared a meal with me. And that was really important to me because there's a stigma, right? There's a stereotype of when you don't know a country and you hear only the bad of it, it's very easy for you to say, oh, that's a bad place. But no, these were all really welcoming, awesome people who were super kind to me, and I can't say better things. Yeah,
and it's one of the things that you'll run into when you get out of your bubble. Because I run into it just in day to day. You meet people around here, and somebody's 30, 40, 50 years old, and they've, other than maybe going to Florida, which is a whole heap of crazy on its own, and when they say Florida, they're really talking Disney World, and Universal theme parks. It's not even Florida. Their travel is so limited, and when you talk to them, it's their experience is so limited. They haven't basically, been out. Their view of the world is what they get off the news. And the fact is, the news doesn't report the good parts. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sell. You're not going to sell ads, on the 6 o'clock news if it's hey, this country, it's awesome, But you watch a show like Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown. Yeah, good show. The guy's a lunatic. I love him. It's just a thing. Well, let's go there. And it's a thing where you see a little bit more. You see a bit more of sometimes the dark underbelly. But you see sort of the real versus, if you go on nice little guided tours, that are sort of packaged for you, you sort of see the hot spots, right? It's oh, you go to Paris, it's Notre Dame Cathedral, da-da-da. But if you walk around the streets yourself, and you just randomly talk to people, and, it's one of those things, be friendly, be outgoing, and you run into the thing where you meet the most remarkable people, you meet, kind, generous, and it's that thing that gives you this hope and a joy in humanity, is that way more of the people, regardless of the stuff you see on the news, even in like this places where, because I'm not stupid, there's places we're not going to go till they clean up a little bit or chill out. Like guess what? Syria right now, not on my top of my travel list. But would I like to go up in the mountains there? See historic Damascus? That'd be amazing. But I'm gonna wait till the people stop killing each other first. Mm-hmm. It'll happen. People run out of energy after a while. It seems to be the way of history. But it's just that. It's like, don't be stupid. Go in with your eyes wide open. But go in as well knowing that, a lot of the places where you go, those are the bad guys. They're just people. Yes, very well, it might be a government that's oppressive. There might be, things going on in an area that make it so you don't really want to go there right now, But again, the vast majority are just people. And the most people I meet, especially in my travels, they're sweet. They're kind, they're generous, they're curious. And that's one of those things that when you sort of have some of those experiences, one of the things you're going to find is that, going on any of these, you find your confidence improves. And I think one of the reasons people are kind of dicks to each other is insecurity. And the more things you get exposed to and the more confident you are in who you are, the easier it is to be kind to people. Mm-hmm. Because yeah. Oh. You want to stop that? Once again, just to finish up. Oh, let's just read that just a little later. So, you guys have seen a bit of behind the scenes and what have you, what it's like to go on a trip. It's not just, and Amabel had done a Facebook post a few weeks ago, and it was brilliant, because it's it was her, sitting looking all cute with a mountain in the background, and then it's what you don't understand about social media pictures is you don't get the backstory. Now, to me, and it's the reason why we travel off the beaten track, is the backstory is the interesting part. But it's, it's this beautiful mountain and you're looking all happy and all that kind of stuff. And both Katie and I, sort of ran into the same thing with it, was because some other people had commented. And people, it's you made this point about, it's you're dealing with your demons and it's the struggles of just being stuck in your own head out there and all the things that people don't get to see. That, when you post on social media. And, the first 4 or 5 comments were all, oh, you look beautiful. Oh, it's such a nice place. Da, 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 da. It's
you missed the point.
You missed the point. But that's one of those things you run into, is that it's not easy. And it's not every day is this brutal struggle, because it's fun. If there was no fun, we wouldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the reasons too why this channel is so important for me, and the reason why I want to be part of a project like this is because that backstory is something I think that goes unnoticed, and I think people have an unrealistic expectation when it comes to kind of these goals, right? They think, I'm going to go to point A, but they think they fixate on this destination, and they totally forget about the journey there. You can't just climb this epic mountain with no training. You need to have those ground steps. Yeah. And I think that's the good part. The part that I enjoy is working our way to get to where we want to get, that journey. So that's mainly what I want to talk about, is just that backstory.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things I think we run into too is too many people they know there's something missing. There's this yearning, right? But whether it's, family pressure, it's whether it's, you got to get a job and be responsible, or you can't do that because you're a girl, or, any of these things that limit us, right? Because a lot of us have conformed because you don't want to disappoint the people around you. And we're really talking to the ones who've been down that road a little bit, and it's like something's missing. It's like, oh, they get to get out for like a weekend camping trip here and there, or they do a little bit of indoor rock climbing. Like these are like little recreational hobbies, but they want more. This is basically trying to influence you on how to get more. And sometimes it's information. Sometimes it's just going, listen, they can do it. Because really, you look at it, what is this channel? If you sort of look at the crew, there's me, sort of a outdoorsy backpack, blah, blah, whatever guy, a bit of climbing, kind of a hacker that way, a bit of mountain biking, but at heart an explorer. I want to see things I haven't seen before. Not things that, the reality is, I'm not going to discover some undiscovered country, right? And that doesn't matter. What I'm going to discover is things that I haven't discovered, because we're all on an individual journey, right? And then, Amabel, Katie, Samantha, who is our resident noob. We last night took her indoor rock climbing for the very first time. Mm-hmm. She's going on her first backpacking trip in a couple of weeks. Everything for her in this field is new. So it's kind of neat to sort of see through, the eyes of somebody who, like, it's not like they've oh yeah, I did some of this before, and but it's all new, and that's kind of a neat perspective. Andrea's been a sort of a backcountry kind of camper person, canoeist, kayaker, but a lot of it's been sort of the weekend recreational side. We want to take it's sort of one of those things, a little kick in the ass, a little push, a little, take as far as she wants to go, take to those, a little bit bigger adventures. And then there's Katie. And Katie is our already world traveler. It's one of those things. Like, if she does not motivate you with what she does to get off your ass and get out and explore, then nothing will. Because...
Touche.
Yeah, it's what she does for all of us. Yeah. So, it's having that neat little crew and seeing everybody's stories. And we're basically, interviews or podcasts like this, we're going to bring other people in, that aren't sort of specifically part of the project, and talk to them. Like, that's how we, learn. That's how, you get your stories out. Because if you think about your life, forget the car, forget the house, forget, any of the things you own and what your status in your career. Those things are all like transient. All you really have when you get down to it is the stories you have, those experiences, turn into your stories, and the relationships you have. That's life. Now, one of the little sort of, pearls of wisdom I give people is, if you're trying to make a decision between two things, pick the one that'll give you a better story. And a lot of times that makes it pretty simple. Friends ask you to go do something adventurous, something you don't normally do, or you could, Netflix and chill. As much fun as that might be, get out and do it. I know this sort of sounds sort of a little bit corny because it's been co-opted by sort of all these self-help books, but say yes more often. If there's something you don't know how to do, don't be afraid. Get excited and go, I want to know how to do that. And it might not become, the best at it. You might just be an amateur hacker. Mm-hmm. But if you're having fun, if you're growing, because you run into the thing, once you stop growing, once you stop learning, this is who I am. You're done. You're just getting old now. Because I don't know about you, but have you ever met some people like in their maybe 60s, 70s, and they've got the attitude of like a 16-year-old? It's like they're just excited about everything still.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas, I've met people who are, hell in their 30s, where it's like, oh, you're an old man already. You're walking around in the skin of, a pretty young person, but your head is an old man. You're this far from, yelling at the kids to get off your lawn.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that too relates kind of to the whole how thing, right? We all have these huge dreams. Everyone has their dreams. Everybody wants to do things. Nobody wants to be the boring old man that yells at the kids on the lawn. But
although Al does.
Yeah, right. It's just, I think for me, anyways, and I'm a firm believer in this, is that if I really focus on why I want to do things, I think that the rest of these things will start to fall into place, like meeting Winston, learning some skills, meeting random people that I can climb with, finding a way to travel, right? That, like, Katie just finds a way to do it,
Yeah.
She knows her why, she knows why she wants to travel, and she just figures it out. So I don't think it's so much about getting caught up in how you're going to do things, and it's more just doing it.
Mm-hmm. Because there's always a way. Like, like I said, we're upfront about it. If you look at it sort of as a big dream, our online properties, and as somebody who's just launching something, it sounds very grandiose. But whether it's, the little ad you saw at the beginning of this video, we get a few cents. Doesn't add up to much. But if what we're doing and what we're saying and it resonates with enough people, it grows. The t-shirt designs that we, are going to be putting out soon. If our message, of living wild, living free, and living right now, if that resonates with you, well, guess what? Just like when I was a teenager and I wanted a Ramones t-shirt because what they said spoke to me, you might want one of our t-shirts. They're pretty cool, 100% organic cotton, really nice. I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's one of those things is yes, because we all need some money. You watch our videos, we get a little money. You click our Amazon link, it doesn't cost you any more, we get a little bit of money. Obviously, if you buy a t-shirt, that costs you a little bit of money.
More money.
But we get a little bit of money. But if more people sort of go, okay, how do I engineer my life to get, have an income? Because guess what? Unless you're going to go squat in the woods and, basically make your own homestead and live off the land, it's sort of the deal we got. We all got to make some cash. But, how much you need, I was talking to Katie on the phone earlier today, and it was a thing where she's like, yeah, if I could maybe bring in 10, 12 grand a year, I'd never have to stop traveling. That's less than a minimum wage job, right? If you work minimum wage, you're bringing in about 20 grand a year. But it all comes in, and if you want to live a quote-unquote modern lifestyle with, all of the bells and whistles, it's not enough money. It's difficult to get by. But if you're at no fixed address, and you're, half the time camping out, other times hostels, other times wherever, is it from the Streetcar Named Desire? That famous line, sometimes I rely on the kindness of strangers. You run into the thing where you don't need a lot of money. But I was actually just talking to a gentleman the other day who right now is working as a mechanical engineer. So very educated, smart guy, who also has a background in web design and information technology.
Mm-hmm.
He's building up some cash, and in the next year or two is going to essentially go on hiatus for 6 years.
Wow.
Going to be living in different countries around the world. And his thing is listen, I got these skills. If I got access to an internet connection somewhere, I can work. And bring in enough to keep going. That's brilliant. you know, because that's one of those things where it's like, you know, you're Canadian, you might be doing work in Canada, but you're doing it from Zimbabwe. There's all different ways nowadays that we can, you know, have the money you need to get by. And guess what? You're never going to be shown on MTV Cribs. Do they still have that show? You know, you're not going to be like a jet setter, but you're going to get a lot of air miles. You know, and that's sort of the heart of it. It's like, you know, do you want basically to, you know, work your life, pay a lot of interest, and by the time you're ready to retire, you're too achy and sore, you know, when you actually now have the freedom to travel, you don't have the energy, you know? Some of those wild and crazy things that you want to try doing, you just physically can't do. Or do you do it now? And, you know, find a way to have, now, do you find a way to have a little bit more, you know, free lifestyle? And that's what we're all about. So anyway, thanks for watching this first episode. Our production values are going to go up. So I'm Winston.
Amabel.
And over in the corner is the Andrew you don't see. But at some point I'm going to get her on camera. She's all like shy and introverted and stuff. So she'll just do like hand gestures at, you know, yeah. And, but she stays quiet, so it doesn't interfere with the production. So yeah, so until next time, it really comes down to a simple thing of living wild, living free, and make sure you live right now.